The plane was cruising at 35,000 feet, the hum of the engines a steady background noise. The cabin was dimly lit, most passengers either asleep or engrossed in their in-flight entertainment. But for Amara, the flight was anything but peaceful. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her hands instinctively moving to her chest. The pain had started as a dull ache, but now it was sharp, almost unbearable. She could feel the pressure building, like a balloon about to burst. Amara glanced at her boyfriend, Tunde, who was sitting next to her, oblivious to her discomfort. He was scrolling through his phone, a satisfied smile on his face. He had been the one to push her into getting the breast implant, and now, as she sat there in agony, she couldn't help but feel a surge of anger toward Tunde. "Tunde," she whispered, her voice trembling. Something is wrong. I think something's happening." Tunde looked up from his phone, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean? You're just sore from the surgery. It's normal." "No, it's not normal," Amara said, her voice rising slightly. "It hurts. It really hurts." Clearly annoyed. "You're overreacting, Amara. Just relax. We'll be home soon and you can rest." Amara wanted to scream. How could he be so dismissive? She had gone through the surgery for him, and now he couldn't even be bothered to care that she was in pain. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing, but the pain was getting worse. She could feel her chest tightening, the pressure building to an unbearable level. And then it happened. There was a loud pop, like the sound of a balloon bursting, followed by a sharp searing pain. Amara gasped, her hands flying to her chest. She could feel something warm and wet spreading beneath her shirt. She looked down, her eyes widening in horror as she saw the blood soaking through the fabric. "Tunde!" she screamed, her voice filled with panic. "Something's wrong! It's exploded!" Tunde turned to her, his eyes widening as he saw the blood. "What the hell?" he exclaimed, jumping out of his seat. "What's happening?" Amara couldn't answer. The pain was overwhelming and she could feel herself slipping into unconsciousness. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the horrified faces of the other passengers as they realized what was happening. So, how did we get here? Let's rewind a bit to how it all started. Amara's story began like many others. She was a young, beautiful woman living in Lagos, Nigeria. She had a good job, a loving family, and a boyfriend who adored her. Or so she thought. Tunde was handsome, charming, and successful. But he had one flaw. He was obsessed with physical appearance. He constantly compared Amara to other women, pointing out their curves and suggesting that she could look like them if she just put in a little effort. At first, Amara brushed off his comment. She was confident in her own skin and didn't feel the need to change herself for anyone. But as time went on, Tunde's comments became more frequent and more insistent. He would send her pictures of women with large breasts, telling her how much more attractive they were. He would make jokes about her flat chest and suggest that she gets breast implants. "You'd be perfect if you just had a little more up top," he would say, his tone light, but his words cutting. Amara tried to ignore him, but the constant criticism began to wear her down. She started to feel self-conscious, constantly comparing herself to the women in the pictures Tunde sent to her. She began to wonder if he was right, if she really would be more attractive with larger breasts. One night, after a particularly hurtful comment from Tunde, Amara broke down in tears. "Why do you keep saying these things?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Do you not love me the way I am?" Tunde sighed, running her hand through his hair. "Of course I love you, Amara. But you have to understand, men are visual creatures. We are attracted to certain things, and if you want to keep a man like me, you have to put in the effort." Amara felt a pang of hurt at his words. "So you are saying I'm not enough for you?" Tunde hesitated, then shrugged. "I'm just saying, if you want to keep me interested, you might want to consider making some changes." Amara didn't know what to say. She loved Tunde, But his words had cut her deeply. She spent the next few days thinking about what he had said, weighing her options. Finally, she made a decision. Amara sat across from Dr. Adebayo, a renowned plastic surgeon in Lagos. She had made the appointment in secret, not wanting Tunde to know until she was sure. Dr. Adebayo was a kind man with a gentle demeanor that put Amara at ease. He listened patiently as she explained her situation, nodding sympathetically. I just want to feel more confident, Amara said, her voice trembling. I want to feel like I'm enough. Dr. Adebayo nodded. I understand, he said. But I want you to know that surgery is a big decision. It's not something to be taken lightly. Are you sure this is what you want? Amara hesitated. She wasn't sure. Not really. But the thought of losing Tunde was too much to bear. Yes, she finally said. I'm sure. Dr. Adebayo studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right. We'll start with the consultation, and then we can discuss your options. Over the next few weeks, Amara went through consultation process. She and Dr. Adebayo discussed the different type of implants, the risk involved, and the recovery process. Amara was nervous, but she was determined to go through with it. She wanted to prove to Tunde and to herself that she was enough. Finally, the day of the surgery arrived. Amara was nervous but excited. She had chosen larger implants than she had initially planned, wanting to make a statement. She wanted Tunde to see her and be blown away. The surgery went smoothly, and when Amara woke up, she was sore but happy. She couldn't wait to see the results. When Amara returned home, Tunde was waiting for her. His eyes lit up when he saw her, and he immediately pulled her into a hug. You look amazing, he said, his voice filled with admiration. I knew you'd make the right decision. Amara smiled, feeling a surge of pride. She had done it. She had made the change, and now Tunde was happy. But as the days went on, she began to notice something strange. The pain wasn't going away. In fact, it was getting worse. Tunde, I think something's wrong, she said one evening, her voice filled with worry. It hurts more than it should. Tunde shrugged. You're just sore, he said. It's normal. You'll be fine. But Amara wasn't fine. The pain continued to worsen, and she began to notice swelling and redness around the incision site. She tried to ignore it, but the discomfort was becoming unbearable. Finally, she decided to call Dr. Adebayo. He listened to her symptoms and immediately scheduled an appointment. When she arrived, he examined her and his expression grew serious. Amara, I think there might be a complication, he said. It looks like one of the implants might be leaking. We need to take you back into surgery. Amara felt a surge of panic. What? No, I can't go through that again. Isn't there another way? Dr. Adebayo shook his head. I'm afraid not. If we don't act quickly, it could lead to a serious infection. Amara felt tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't want to go through another surgery, but she didn't have a choice. She agreed, and the surgery was scheduled for the following day. The second surgery was more complicated than the first. Dr. Adebayo discovered that one of the implants had indeed ruptured, and there was significant damage to the surrounding tissue. He did his best to repair it, but he warned Amara that there could be long-term complications. Amara was devastated. She had gone through all of this for Tunde, and now she was facing even more pain and uncertainty. But she didn't have the time to dwell on it. Tunde had booked a trip for them to Dubai, and he insisted that they go. You'll feel better once we're there, he said. It will be a fresh start. Amara didn't want to go, but she didn't want to disappoint Tunde. She agreed, and they boarded the plane. The flight started off smoothly, but as they reached the cruising altitude, Amara began to feel a sharp pain in her chest. She tried to ignore it, but it only got worse. She could feel the pressure building, and she knew something was wrong. And then it happened. The implant exploded, sending a wave of pain through her body. She screamed, clutching her chest as blood soaked through her shirt. The other passengers stared in horror, unsure of what to do. Tunde was frozen in shock, his face pale. Amara, what's happening? He asked, his voice trembling. Amara couldn't answer. The pain was too much, and she felt herself slipping into unconsciousness. The last thing she heard was the sound of the flight attendants rushing toward her, their voices filled with panic. Amara woke up in a hospital bed, her chest wrapped in bandages. The doctors explained that the implant had ruptured due to the change in air pressure during the flight. The damage was severe, and they had to perform emergency surgery to remove the implant and repair the tissue. Amara was devastated. She had gone through all of this for Tunde, and now she was left with scars and a body that felt foreign to her. She felt betrayed, not just by Tunde, but by herself. She had allowed him to pressure her into making a decision that had ultimately destroyed her confidence and her health. Tunde visited her in the hospital, but their relationship was never the same. Amara couldn't forgive him for pushing her into the surgery, and Tunde couldn't understand why she was so angry. They drifted apart and eventually broke up. Amara spent months recovering, both physically and emotionally. She had to learn to love herself again, to accept her body for what it was. It wasn't easy, but with the support of her family and friends, she began to heal.